Welcome back to the Racing Pigeon Podcast with Kevin Miller and Wes Clark. This week we got another interview, I believe, and it's going to take up the whole time because unfortunately Kevin's not feeling up to par today. So, but just give us a little heads up about what's coming with the interview.
Sure. So we're going to talk to Mr. Jeff Lamberton today. He is a very accomplished second generation flyer from out in Oklahoma. He's excellent, and he actually has his own YouTube channel where he interviews some of the big breeders and flyers worldwide. So he actually travels to Europe and tours lofts over there, and he has friends all around the world. However, we're going to talk to him, of course, keeping our theme as geared towards the beginners. We're going to talk to Jeff about things like loft design, and then we may get into, in our racing segment, into different distances. What does it mean if you have a sprint racer versus a long distance bird? What do those terms mean? What's the difference between the type of bird? Things like that. So we should cover a whole gamut of good stuff with Jeff today. So
Sounds
looking forward
good.
to it.
Well, let's jump into it so we can get you back off your chair. I hope you get to feeling better. Next week
Thank you.
we should be back with a full episode.
Thank you. All right, pigeon people, listen up. And yes, I know you're out there. If you're tired of your birds giving you that, you could have upgraded me by now. Look, it's time to visit rpauctions.com. This is the hot spot where racing pigeon breeders buy, sell, and outbid each other like it's the Super Bowl of feathers. The site's easy to use, the birds are top notch, and the bidding gets, let's just say, intense. So do your loft a favor. Head over to rpauctions.com and find a bird that won't judge you every time you walk by. All right, welcome back, everybody, to another segment of Racing Pigeon Podcast with Kevin and Wes. Wes has to go on a little break here, so it's just going to be me. But I am so happy to be joined today by Mr. Jeff Lamberton, very accomplished, I believe, second generation flyer out in Oklahoma. So, Jeff, why don't you tell us just in 2 or 3 minutes, real quick, about your background, your experiences in flying pigeons?
Yeah, so I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, second generation fancier. My dad, John, Dr. John Lamberton, started a blog in the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of showing what he does every day. And he was many times in the top 10 national in the ARPU. He's first national in '08. So I was very fortunate and lucky to learn from him, grow up around him and the birds. He went with Mike Gannis many times over to Belgium and made a lot of connections over there. So I was able to meet a lot of the kind of the stars, if you would, of the sport. And I've kind of wanted to carry on my dad's legacy of education by doing my own podcast on Lamberton Racing Pigeons. And, my dad still helps me with the birds when he's able to and is around, but being near 80, he's not physically able to do it like he used to. So I'm carrying on the racing tradition here. And we race club. Very successful racing at the club level, winning champion bird and average speed, whether it's young birds, old birds. Very competitive, trying to always gain seconds to win. And then we fly one loft races and send them all around the United States, Mexico, different places. So that's the quick version of who I am. If that works, we've had a lot of success in ARP over the years. My first year flying separate from my dad was 2010, and I was 6th national ARPU that season flying my own team. So I've had a lot of good fortune of education from my dad and others, and really take this sport seriously. And so I appreciate you having me on because I think this type of stuff we need to help people with.
Yeah, the whole point of this podcast is to help grow the sport, get more people interested. I mean, we do have the YouTube channel, but we're also on Spotify and Apple Music, so you can find us all over the place. Probably more places than you want to find us, but that's the goal, man. Is education and just trying to build interest in the sport and grow the sport. You're very lucky out there where you are. I think you've got a lot more flyers than we have in South Carolina. We have a little club of 8 people, and that's it. We have no combine, nothing. So I'm very envious of people that live in places where there are a lot more flyers. A lot more activity going on. But that is wonderful. Jeff, what do you consider to be not your father's, but simply your biggest accomplishment so far in the sport? What is your most proudest moment or the biggest race you won that you consider the biggest race? Tell me about that.
Uh, my first one loft race, I have a couple examples. If my first one loft race in 2012, I was on the first drop of the Oklahoma Twister race in Oklahoma City. That's Rick and Steve Martis. Um, that was pretty cool. I was there in person, and one loft racing, there's a lot of luck that your bird's ready on the final race and that it's in good condition and is motivated and all those things. So for my very first one loft race to hit in the first drop on a final was pretty exciting. It got me, optimistic and excited that I had the birds that could do that. My dad was more focused on flying here and not doing as much one loft racing. So I kind of pioneered that. But then in 2015, the San Diego Holiday Cup, we were first on a 3-bird drop, and that bird won around 30 grand. That was pretty exciting, amazing, because that's such a challenging course. So on a one loft level, those are a couple of them. Locally, club flying here, my first season solo for my dad, we were actually competing against each other. So uh, when we would get birds coming home, we didn't know if they were his or mine because our lofts were next to each other.
Oh,
And I ended up seeing about 4 or 5 birds break in, and I'm calling, and my dad's kind of calling, and we're both looking up, and then all 4 or 5 of them land and go into his loft. And he kicked my butt pretty bad that day. Um, but that season, I ended up having the ace pigeon of club, combine, and federation. It was a grizzle hen. Really, my dad kind of made me focus on taking care of just a handful of pigeons versus a big flock and big team. So I had like 3 or 4 I flew in the A race series, and I think 5 or 6 I flew in the B race series. Just a very small team. Everything was done perfectly. Feeding was right. Everything was done meticulously, by the book, so that I was really ready to start growing my team. And so I really think that, getting the ace pigeon to start off with was amazing. My favorite memory with my dad that I always remember, we had a 400-mile race from Austin, Texas, and one of our top pigeons, the wheat start, he's Nestmate Cohen Luke, one of our birds that I promote quite a bit. He hit the landing board, and it was a day where there was kind of circular winds, and I know a lot of people don't like tailwinds, but this particular race, he averaged 70 miles an hour, which I thought was pretty incredible. Even though it was a tailwind, he broke way out in front, and my dad and I were high-fiving when we got him in, and we were really excited. And while we're celebrating high-fiving, another champion we had named Purple Haze hit the landing board right after the wheat start. So we ended up taking first and second in the Federation, Club Combine Federation, and we ended up winning the state race. We did state races back then with Oklahoma City and combined it. So there was a lot of pigeons. And so that was one where there was swirling winds. It was kind of one of those days where it was unpredictable, but we'd start doing 70 and breaking out. I think he's about 10 minutes, 15 minutes ahead. It was pretty exciting for sure.
goodness
Those are just a
gracious.
few examples of stuff that comes to mind.
Yeah, so you've had a lot of success. Well, that is wonderful, Jeff. And those are some special memories, I'm sure, with you and your family and everything. I mean, just sitting there with your dad, watching the drop come in. I mean, it's got to be so exciting and such special memories.
Yeah, it's tons of work to get your
Yes.
pigeons to the point where they can make it home, not just race
Yeah.
home, but make it home. And you get to enjoy it for maybe 10 to 15 seconds. And
I
then once
know.
you're in, it's over. So
Yeah, you're like,
it's a
oh,
lot of
what now?
yeah, it's a lot of work for that high, that dopamine rush, but man, it's the best.
Yeah.
It's incredible when you and your birds come together for that success and your work pays off. And then, of course, there's those days, races where things don't go right and you have to reevaluate and figure it out. So that's what's so complex and challenging and fun.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. So I want to dive into our topic today, Jeff. And our topic today in our beginner series is, where do people keep their pigeons, right? People have been, following my podcast here. We're growing our interest. We've now decided that, okay, hey, I want to get into this hobby. It sounds fascinating. It sounds fun. But what do I need to keep my pigeons in? Where do pigeons live? Are they going to live in my house in a bird cage, or what does the place they live look like? What should it look like, right? And so you and I both know that is called a pigeon loft, right? That's vocabulary in our world. The pigeons live in in a loft. So there's a lot of I guess different ways you can build a loft, right?
Right.
Let's start with location. So you've decided to get pigeons. Obviously they're going to live in a building in your yard. Is there a certain direction the loft should face? Does it matter for the race course? Does it matter for other geography purposes? I mean, should it not face trees? Should it not face the north? Should it not face what's your what would you tell a new person, as far as where to locate the loft? What's the
Well,
ideal spot?
yeah, if they're going to be, I'm assuming they're going to be flying in a club. If you're just
Yep.
breeding pigeons to send to a one loft race, that's a little different. But if
Yep.
your plan is to fly in a club level, you typically for what we do is we face our loft the direction that we're going to be racing. Now, is it the most important thing? No. Pigeons are extremely adaptable. So I have buddies that have power lines by their loft. I have buddies who have trees right behind their loft. The pigeons kind of have to weave through trees to get into the loft. Ideally you have plenty of space for them to land and come in and all of that, but you really have to figure out with the space you have in your yard or backyard what you can have space to do, what you can afford to do. But the number one thing I always tell people when they're building their loft is you want it to be comfortable, not just for the pigeons, but for yourself. You want to make it an environment that you enjoy being in.
Mhm.
If it's a tiny building where your head is down when you have to enter and you have to squat down and all that, you're not going to enjoy being in there, and thus you'll not be in there very long and spend much time. So you want to have a comfortable place where you're able to uh, get in there with the birds and enjoy your time and not to be a strain on your body.
Okay, perfect. Now I know that there's an old, I don't say wives' tale, but a lot of the old timers, when I was getting into the sport, they told me, well, make sure your loft faces south. Make sure your loft faces south. And I never understood why. Have you heard the same thing, or is that just
Our
something
loft
something on
face
the East
south.
Coast?
Yeah, our loft face south, but that's because we fly from the south.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yep.
but there have been years where we flew from the north. We switched it up. The past 10 years or so, we haven't done that. We've just been on the south course. And I don't think in the grand scheme of things it matters that much other than, what I always teach people is gaining seconds. This game is all about seconds. We've
Yeah.
seen many pigeon races won or lost by a matter of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds. So you're trying to gain those seconds. So if you're wanting your birds to gain 5 or 6 seconds, you can have the loft be on the course to where they land and come in without having to loop around or land in a weird spot. You know what I mean? That would be the only thing. But I'm not familiar with why south would be the way to go, no matter what direction your course is. I don't know anything about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I don't either. I always thought it odd. The only thing I could think of is up north, like we're talking like, Minnesota. Maybe you would want so that the cold northern winds aren't blowing into the loft. So I guess that could be an aspect of the reasoning. And
Yeah, I
also
think
this,
that's it.
go ahead,
It's
Jeff.
all about weather and wind and the north wind not getting in. You don't want direct air hitting the birds. So that I think that's exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah. So possibly if you live up north, maybe oriented south might be, the deal for you. But I'm kind of on board with you, Jeff. I think base it towards the race course. If you know your race course, and you need to find your local club to find that information and before you start loft construction for sure. Now, as far as size, Jeff, let's say I want to fly a team of 30 pigeons. Okay, I need a building for 30 pigeons. What size do I need? How much room does a pigeon need?
Yeah, overcrowding is what we're getting at there. You don't want to
Yep.
overcrowd the birds to where, if you have a section that holds 12, you don't want 15 in there.
Yeah.
You want to have, I think it's like 3 cubic feet per pigeon on a
Okay.
perch,
That's what I was
something
getting
like
at. Yeah.
that.
Yep.
Yeah, and you want to have less. Just because a section can hold 30, you don't want to put 30 in there if possible.
Gotcha.
If you have 30, you would ideally like the section to be able to hold 40,
Okay.
meaning you want them to have plenty of space. You don't want them packed in together.
Mhm.
One thing that's underrated in the pigeon sport is pigeons are really territorial. and the more
Mm-hmm.
territory they have, the more passion they have for the loft. So
Yep.
it's kind of like I always tell people, if you're on a road trip, and you know that your wife and family are waiting on you in your nice house, and you're ready to get home to your own bed and to your recliner and hang out. It's much more motivating to go back to that than it is being a single bachelor living in a small apartment or something. You may not be as motivated to get home. So territoriality for sure with pigeons. Give them territory, make sure they have plenty of space, and you'll have a lot less health issues that way, and a lot less cleanup, and it's cheaper, more less medication, less feed, all that.
Yep.
So definitely, uh, that's my long-winded version.
Yep, no, that's good, Jeff. That's good. I know some people buy these pre-made sheds, right? You can go to Home Depot or Lowe's, get these pre-built sheds. I mean, is that something you can do? And what sort of modifications would you have to make to something like that to make it livable for pigeons? Because I don't imagine you can just buy a shed, throw birds in it, close the door, and be like, "Hey, there's my birds," right? What kind of
Yeah,
modifications would a person need to make to a shed to turn it into a loft?
yeah, you don't want to treat homing pigeons that you're expecting to be racing pigeons. You don't want to treat them as like chickens where they're just in a coop in a building, and that's it. Pigeons need ventilation. You don't want direct air hitting the pigeons as much as possible, but
Okay.
you do want some wiring to be cut out at the bottom to where the air can circulate in, and then you need some wiring at the top near the roof where it can come out. So you want it to be somewhat like a chimney, to where if you were to light a match or a cigarette or a cigar, the smoke rises and leaves, and it doesn't sit there and just stir and circulate in the loft. You want it to breathe.
Yep. Yep.
So our nest boxes are off of the ground a few feet, about waist high, and the wiring on the front of the loft is just below that. So it's about like this, to where the air doesn't hit
Okay.
directly on their nest boxes where they are, but it can circulate up. So you want
Yep.
it to be somewhat like a chimney and have ventilation. And if you want to put aviaries on it to where they can go out and get some sunshine and some air, then that's fine. But where
Yep.
they're going to rest at night in their boxes needs to be a dry, good air flow, ventilation. That's key, is it being dry, no rain getting on them, no moisture, and good airflow. So if you want to buy a pre-med building, that's fine, but you are going to have to do some things to improve the ventilation, which is key.
Yeah. Does it need
Pigeons,
windows? Does it need windows, Jeff? Do I have to have windows?
you can have wire windows where it lets light in and air in, but you can have, I've seen many people who have the pieces they can slide over the wire if it's cold and they want to close it off.
Yep.
It just depends again on where you are. Someone up in the Northeast is going to have to do a different setup than somebody in South Texas where it's hot.
Very true.
So it depends on where you are to how you change that up. But I think, especially like we said earlier, in the winter time when it's a north wind and it's cold, you don't want that cold direct air hitting your birds,
Mhm.
um, which
But
is
they
probably
still need
good.
but they still need ventilation. You can't like
They
keep it.
still need
Yeah.
ventilation. It's just the direct air. So as I said, you can have the air coming in on the ground, or not on the ground, but in the lower level
Bottom.
of the loft, and then coming up and out.
Yep.
And so we
Yep.
have in the ceiling, we have wiring. Um, we have wiring in the ceiling, but there's also wood. So it's half wire, half wood. So above the boxes, it's wood. And in front, where you would stand in a way, there's wire so the air can go up and out of the loft. So it's
Gotcha.
like a
Gotcha.
chimney style.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. It's interesting when I stand out on certain days out in my yard, I can actually see the bird dust blowing out the top vents. And it's just
Yeah.
so the air is coming in the bottom, and you literally see the white dust coming out the top. It's really it's fascinating. So you'll know if you have your loft ventilated properly. And I think Jeff, they could even do a smoke test, right? Take
Yeah.
before you put birds in it, as you were
Right.
saying, take a cigar or something in there and watch where the smoke goes. And I think that's actually would be a great way to know if you've got it correct or not. So I think that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
The one of the other things, I'm very fortunate to have been in some of the top lofts in the world over in Belgium, Holland, and Germany, and all of them are that way, where they're really well ventilated. And
Mhm.
the guys that build lofts over there, my dad raced in Belgium, had a loft built over there, and the older gentleman that built his loft did that very thing. He lit a match and watched where the smoke went. So,
So wasn't my idea then.
yeah.
Someone
So,
beat me to it. Yeah, that's cool though.
yeah.
All right, wonderful. Now, so we've got our loft. what kind of perches does a pigeon need? Because I'm picturing a bird on a tree, right? It's round branch. I mean, is your loft full of round tree branches, or what do pigeons sit on? What do they roost on?
It's a good question. So, my race hens are going to be on perches that are, just enough for them to sit and perch on. And the reason I do that is when I race, I separate sexes. Cocks and hens are separated.
Okay.
So my hen,
Are these like 2 by 2s?
yes,
Okay, this
basically,
is stick
yeah.
out. Okay.
Yeah, and it gives them enough space for them to perch, but to not mate up with each other. Hens will mate up with each other if left in a room of boxes. Then all the cocks are in boxes that are a couple of feet deep and wide. So
Okay.
we have it's called wood boxes, where the cocks can be in the boxes, and then the hens are on the perches.
Mhm.
And whenever they come home from a race, hens come home from a race, they can go into a 2 by 2 foot deep, 2 foot wide box with their mate waiting on them, and then then you separate them back out once that's over. But so it just depends on the space you have. You can fly the cocks as well on perches, but
Mhm.
again, it goes back to my analogy of coming home to something. A lot of territory is best, and when your hen knows she gets to be in her box, it's motivating as well. So that's
Yeah.
how we do it. Is we have boxes, and when they so you may ask me this later, and I apologize if I'm jumping ahead, but we
That's
have
all
a
right.
life cycle loft, and that's something my dad kind of came up with, is that when our birds hit our landing board and trap in, they can go right, they can go left, they can go straight. And
Oh,
you have the doors closed in order for them to know which way to go. So when they trap in, the hens are on perches on the left, the cocks are in their boxes on the right, and the back of the loft is where your breeders are. And so,
okay.
if you don't want to have prisoner breeders that you can let out and exercise, they
Yep.
can too be a part of the life cycle loft. So,
Oh,
people who may not have as big of a backyard and have a lot of space, you can have everything in one and just have it a life cycle rotation, to where a
yeah.
cock goes from landing coming into the right as a racer, and then you retire him to the breeding loft, then you move
Yep.
him to the back. So
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
how
that's cool.
we advise people to build their lofts.
That is really interesting. That's awesome. So yeah, the perches are just little nubs of wood basically that stick out from the wall. Some people use V perches, some use box perches. But a quick Google search, and I'm sure our listeners can see some examples. But no, you don't want tree branches, hanging in your, hanging in your loft. It's not what you need. They need open space to fly up and down to their perch. You don't want obstacles, in the middle of the sections and things like that, Jeff. So I think you would agree with that, right?
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, you don't want to make it. Pigeons are extremely adaptable, and you want to make it a open environment that has plenty of space. And like you said, you don't need tree branches in there. I've seen guys that have, like Yellow Roziers in Belgium's a friend of mine. He has uh, aviaries where his hens are, and he has 2 by 4s lined up to where
Oh yeah,
they can sit on those, and then they
yeah,
go to the floor to eat and drink, but they go up, and so there's a lot of
yeah,
ways to go about it. You can
yep,
be
yep,
creative as you want, whatever you have space, time, and a budget for. And the
yep,
pigeons
yep,
adapt. There's really
yep.
not exactly one way to do it, but one thing I do have that I'll send to you and you can show people is a
Okay,
blueprint for what I'm talking about. We have our basic loft, then
awesome.
we have the more advanced blueprint here, where it shows you what I was talking about, where you can have
The
um,
life cycle loft.
the life cycle. Yeah. So
Oh,
I'll
that's
send you
cool.
all this so you can show the viewers if you want to.
Awesome. That'd be great, Jeff. And then as far as let's talk about loft cleaning. So we didn't talk about the floor yet, but going back to your shed from Home Depot, you're going to have a, treated lumber floor. It's going to be solid. Um, do I need to cut holes in that? Do I need to, what do I need to do with that? How
It
do, how do
depends.
I clean that? What's the deal there?
It depends on how much time you have and what you want to dedicate to it. A lot of guys that are busy, working guys or girls that are out working and don't have time to scrape every day or every couple days, it's best to probably have wire flooring. The negative with wire flooring is that it's harder to control the temperature in your loft and the airflow in your loft, because
Okay.
on a windy day, the wind can come up through the floor.
Yeah.
So a wood floor prevents that. But the thing with wood floors, you have to consistently scrape them and
Yep.
sweep the floor and dustpan and get the droppings out and put them in a bucket and get them out of there. Versus a
Yep.
wire floor, they can go to the ground, and then however much time passes, you can get under there and rake it out.
Mhm.
I know some people put trays under the wire flooring, and they can pull the trays out and then scrape the trays into a trash can. There's all
Yep.
sorts of weird things people do that can make the
Yeah.
job easier. There are
Hey.
even guys that um, have belts in their loft where they can
Oh,
scrape everything off with belts on a belt
oh,
system. So
that's
it depends
cool.
on how much money you want to spend
Yeah,
and how crazy you
yeah,
want to get.
yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, that's really
Yeah.
interesting. So I think we've learned two key things: well ventilated and dry.
Hmm.
Keep your loft well ventilated. Keep your loft dry. No wet build up anywhere. Rain's getting in, that's a big problem. If rodents, vermin are getting in, huge problem. We'll talk about health in future episodes, but rodents carry all kinds of bad, salmonella, E. coli, you name it. You don't want those in your loft. So, you know, vermin proof, dry, and ventilated. And I think you've got the basics of a good loft at that point.
Absolutely. Couldn't
Then
agree
the
more.
design's up to you, right?
Right. Yeah,
For
it's
sure.
just again, it's just up to the time, the money, and space.
It's
And
all
you
about
can
money,
make it.
Jeff.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the tough part for the new guys, is
I know.
it
I
costs some
know.
money to get started, but
Yep.
you can grow it as you go along, and make it as simple as you want it to be or as complex as you want it to be. It can take you 5 minutes to take care of your birds. It can take you an hour to take care of your birds. It depends on
That's
how you
right.
set it up, and there's no one way to do it for sure.
That's right. That's right. Perfect. All right. Well, Jeff, I think that's good for our first segment. So I think you're going to stick around for segment two today, right?
That's it. Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. All right, Jeff. We'll be back after this message from rpauctions.com, and we'll see you on the flip side. Bye for now.
Thank you.
All right, pigeon people, listen up. And yes, I know you're out there. If you're tired of your birds giving you that, you could have upgraded me by now. Look, it's time to visit rpauctions.com. This is the hot spot where racing pigeon breeders buy, sell, and outbid each other like it's the Super Bowl of feathers. The site's easy to use, the birds are top notch, and the bidding gets, let's just say, intense. So do your loft a favor. Head over to rpauctions.com and find a bird that won't judge you every time you walk by. All right, welcome back to our final segment today at the Racing Pigeon Podcast with Jeff Lamberton and Kevin Miller. And Jeff, I think for this one, we're going to talk about club racing. And so, someone that's new to club racing, they may not understand when we start talking about, oh, that's a sprint bird, and that's a sprint race, and that's a long distance race, and that's a long distance bird. So, I'm going to just kind of flesh out some of the vocabulary that pigeon people use on race day, and then when we talk about different races as far as distances go, and different birds that excel at those different distances. So what kind of insight can you shed? What is a sprint race, first of all?
Yeah, sprint race is your shorter distance, so it can be 20 miles up to, some people would say 200 miles, 150 to 200 miles range. So it's just a shorter race that you can get done in the morning. It's something that originated in Belgium for the guys that wanted to be able to go to the club and have a couple of drinks with their buddies
Hmm.
and have their birds come in the morning, go to the club and strike their clocks, and it was all over and done with, and they didn't have to use up their whole day to do it. So it was a
Hmm.
way to compete
Interesting.
at a short distance, not taking too much of your time, that sort of thing.
And they have whole series over there in Europe, right? They have a
Right.
whole sprint series.
Yeah, if you just wanted to fly sprint only, you could do that for sure.
Okay. So here's my question now. Are there specific homing pigeons bred just for sprint distance races?
Yeah, there's a lot of famous pigeon fanciers that if you're new to the sport, you may not recognize these names, but the more time you spend in the sport, you'll hear the names. But let's go to the original, which is the Jansen brothers of Arendonk. They
Yep.
are in Belgium, and there's 4 or 5 of them that would have different roles in the loft: cleaning, feeding, watering, basketing, training. and that's why they're so effective. But they were great at the sprint, and they just perfected it. And their body type was kind of a little shorter in the cast of the pigeon, where the keel bone is a little shorter, a little wider chest, really fast and able to pump their wings quickly. Flights maybe just a hair wider. That's kind of the more of the sprint. Current sprint birds, people would know that have been in it for a bit. You'd hear the Vandenbulk birds, which is the Kittle lines, the
Yep.
Greipel lines,
Yep.
Leo Harriman's Bolt, and some of those lines are examples of some famous sprint pigeons that raced at some shorter distances. And sprint pigeons, although they have the cast I was talking about in the flights and the different kind of more of a bigger structure in the body, they also have incredible orientation. They orient very quickly,
Hmm.
and they break from the pack, because when you're dealing with a race that's such short distance, the winners typically are going to break early from the pack and
Yeah.
have a great homing ability as well as the physical traits we talked about.
Yeah, because you're typically going to get in a short race a large group of birds that stay together. And so
Hmm.
your bird's got to be able to know when to break off and head towards home. If it gets caught in the group, you lost. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's very interesting. I never actually considered that. I've got
Yeah,
some
and
kittle birds out here, and they have the body shape you described, and they're also really good at orienting themselves. So that's really
yeah,
making sense.
and
Interesting.
it's the the other aspect of it. I'm trying to figure out how I was going to word that. I lost it. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. So we have sprints. So let's say 200 miles and less, right? It would
Right.
be a sprint race. So do we have middle distance races, or is that a thing? I know in
Yes.
Europe it is, right? But I don't know in
Yeah.
America that we really have a middle distance. What is
Yeah,
that?
so I remember what I was going to say now is that the
Okay.
Jansen brothers or their Vanden Bulken or Leo Hermans, what they would do is they would take the pigeons that would excel at the sprint, the short races, and they would keep those birds and breed from them. And the ones that wouldn't excel at that, they weren't, kept on the team or in the breeding loft. So you
Okay.
develop a sprint bird that way by taking the ones that do well at that and
Hmm.
breeding from them. Then you
Okay.
go and transition to the middle distance. And like you said, America is much different than the rest of the world, especially Europe. We in America will fly from 100 miles up to 600 miles, some places a little further. If there was a 700 or 800 mile race, Americans would send their birds to that too. We
Oh yeah.
like racing all distance. That's the way it's always kind of been.
Yeah.
Um, and in Europe, you can specialize. You can be a sprint racer. You can do the middle distance, which is kind of your 200 up to about 400, 350 to 400 miles.
Okay.
And then your greater middle distance is just beyond that. And then your long distance, of course, is 500 and up,
Yep. Okay.
500 miles and up.
Yep.
So a friend of mine, my mentor in Belgium is Serge Van Elsacker. He is one of the top middle distance fanciers in Belgium over his career. He's been doing it since he was a kid. And he loves the middle distance. And again, a middle distance is typically a 1 day race where you're most likely going to see your birds that day.
Yep.
Um, and
Well,
so, he would win a lot of club and provincial races instead of states. They have provinces over there. And in his province, he would win first provincial quite often. And he would take those birds and add them to his stock loft and breed from them and develop the middle distance type of pigeon. Serge has no interest in sprint. The only reason he flies sprint is to exercise his birds and teach them to orient and come home. He doesn't
gotcha.
value sprint, doesn't care about it, has no interest in it.
Gotcha.
Now in 2026, he's switching his goals from not just middle distance, but he's also going towards the long distance and kind of
Okay.
uh, breeding more for that. So he's had to take his family of birds and add some more distance blood into it to try a new challenge for himself. So in America, like I said, we will go any distance, and we're looking for the all distance pigeon that can go 1 to 6 and be competitive. Over
Yep.
there, there's a lot more specialized groupings, and there's
Yep.
other guys like Yellow Roziers as an example. He wants to win no matter what distance, and he has.
Yep.
Yellow's
Yep.
won at young bird level. He's won at middle distance. He's won at the long distance too. So you have guys over there that are similar to us in style where they'll race whatever they want or whatever they can. Then you have
Okay.
other guys who are just kind of specialized in certain distances.
Okay. What are some other big name birds that are middle distance? Would it be like the cannibal? They
Yeah,
go
he was
middle
middle
distance.
distance
Okay.
ace. Yeah, he was middle
Yep.
distance ace in 1995.
Yep.
And a lot of our blood goes back to the cannibal.
Oh yeah.
The hen that you got for me goes back to the sister to the cannibal.
Yep.
So Antoine Jacobs is my dad's mentor. He bought a sister to the cannibal in 1996 and added it into his bloodline. So the hen you have for me has some of that in
Nice.
her. Yeah, middle distance cannibal is probably going to be the one that would be the most famous that we could name for sure, most impact around the world.
And body style for middle distance, gonna have a slimmer breast. What else?
Yeah, more medium in size, not quite as wide chested as the sprint bird, maybe
Longer casting.
a hair longer cast.
Okay.
But um, the Jansen brothers got a lot of data on their birds breeding great middle and long distance pigeons too.
Mm,
And so it kind of tells you that it really depends on the way you challenge the birds and
okay.
selecting the ones that can do it. So when you breed pigeons, if you have 20 pigeons, three or four of them can probably do well in the sprint. Four or
Hmm.
five of them can really do well in the middle distance, and then four or five of them can do really well at the long distance. Not every pigeon's going to excel at every distance or one particular. It just depends. So just because a bird is a sprint bird, and you've seen this from your Kittle bloodlines, the Vandenbosch birds, they do really well when you cross them. They do really well at 400 miles, 350,
Yep.
400 miles. So you would say that Vandenboschs are sprint, but when you look at the one loft racing scene, they're really impactful on the 350.
Yeah.
So it really depends on what you're looking for, how you cross pigeons, bloodlines. There's not really, you can't really put them in a category and say that's the only thing they do, because we've seen
Hmm.
that Janssens and the Vanderbilks and other sprint lines be able to produce good pigeons at different
Hmm.
distances. It just depends on if you're able to find those ones that can do it and then build around them.
Gotcha. All right, and then finally, let's talk about long distance. Long distance. So in America, we're talking what? Anything beyond 400 miles, basically, I think we would consider long distance, right?
Yeah,
Maybe
long
not.
distance means a 2 day race, and anything above a 400-mile race is considered a 2 day race. When
Gotcha.
my dad was flying in the 80s and 90s, getting a day bird at 500 miles, 600 miles was very challenging. Most of the
Wow.
time, you didn't expect it.
Mm,
And since the sport has changed, birds have been imported,
yeah.
medicating, vaccinating products, all this stuff has come into play to where birds are faster, 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 faster.
Yep.
So getting day birds on a 400, 500, 600 is now something that is possible.
Yeah.
Compared to back then, it wasn't. So it's
Okay.
technically, though, 400 up's technically a 2 day race. So you're
Yep.
you're expecting your birds to take 2 days to get home,
Mhm.
and those typically are longer in the cast. Their flights are long and thin, um, and they have incredible stamina. They do not stop flying. The sprint
Yeah.
pigeon is going to give you all it has on that short distance and pump its wings and get home quickly, but it'll slow down the further the distance, versus a long distance stays steady and keeps pumping its wings. And the analogy that my dad always tells people is it's like rowing a boat. If you have a really fat, wide paddle and you're rowing, you're going to burn your arms out quickly, right? But if your
Yeah.
paddle's long and thin, you're going to be able to paddle and row for a lot longer time.
Yep.
So longer distance pigeons typically have the flights that are longer and thinner, a little bit longer cast, and they just don't quit. They keep coming, and they don't take breaks. They just keep moving. And then,
And a little bit of a longer keel as well, I believe, right?
yeah, they certainly can.
Yeah. What about a deep, speaking of keels, I know we haven't covered this, but a deep keel versus a shallow keel. One better for sprint, one better for distance, or depth of keel not really as important as length of keel? What do you think?
So this is the controversial, always
Uh-oh.
debated.
I
I
didn't
don't know
mean
if
to do
it's
that, Jeff.
I don't know if it's controversial, but it everybody has an opinion on body type and keels, and if the vent's open, is it shut? Does the keel touch the vent? Is it rounded at all? And
Yeah.
so I don't know if there's a true this is the answer, but for me, I'm not as into the deep keeled pigeons. I like the kind of medium sized bird that has a nice keel. If it's a little bit open, that's okay with me. If you're trying to win a show, then you may want the pigeon's vent and keel to connect. But I know I keep talking about it, but Yellow Rogier's had a pigeon a year or two ago he calls Pullman, and it was a 500-mile winner for him, 500-mile provincial winner. I can't remember what he did on the national level, but he was very um, much a tough pigeon that had, I think, 10 or 11 hours on the wing and came in and won. And Yella said, Pullman is a little bit open on his vent. So what does that tell all these experts that say you can't have an open vent bone? So I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't, I know for me, if I'm holding a pigeon, I prefer to have a nice smooth vent, nice smooth keel that connects
Yeah.
to the vent. But there are pigeons out there that aren't built like that that can win races. And so I don't think it's a perfect science by any means,
Yep.
but it's just personal preference, I think, mostly.
Yeah, we got sidetracked a little bit there. Speaking of back to our long distance, what are the bloodlines that are traditionally known as being the excelling at the long distance? Are these the Jan Ardens, the Huskins? What do we talk about?
Yeah, I think Jan Arden's pigeons are those type of pigeons I talked about earlier that they can keep pumping and not quit.
Mhm.
Um, Yellama, I think, is the name in Belgium now in Europe
Okay,
that
that's a
has
new
the
one for me.
Barcelona. Yeah, I may be pronouncing his name wrong. I've never met him, but I know the name. But he's,
Okay.
in Europe they have Barcelona, and that is the big race from
The big
Spain.
one.
And for a lot of guys, it's 6, 7, 800 miles. For the English, they have to cross over the channel,
Yep.
and Belgians they have a little more standard route than Holland up above Belgium. They get pretty good returns.
Hmm.
Um, Germany flies it as well, but
Wow.
those are really tough long distance pigeons where you see, like you said, some of the names you mentioned
Hmm.
that people would know. For me here, Coolhan Luke's our best long distance pigeon that we've had. He was 202 times first prize 600 miles. He
Wow. Daybird?
won. What's that?
Was he a daybird?
He was twice. Yeah.
Wow.
He won a 500-mile race. We even sent Coolhan Luke to a 700-mile race. It's the only time I've flown 700 miles, and
Wow.
there was, I think, two or three birds that made it back from that race, and he was one of them. And I think it took him about 10 days, and he came home. So
No.
yeah,
Oh
he's
my
just an
goodness.
outlier pigeon, and that's why we've built around him.
Wow.
But here's the thing too, is that Coy and Luke goes back to the cannibal twice, and you would say, or I would say, or anyone would
Hmm.
say, cannibal's a middle distance pigeon. But
Yeah.
you put the Antoine Jacobs pigeons, which are more long distance, into the cannibal, and you get that hybrid bird that can do anything. Because Coy and Luke also won a 300-mile race.
Wow.
Um, and
Huh.
his nestmate, the wheat start I told you about earlier, that won from Austin, Texas, he won a 170-mile race, a 400-mile race, a 300-mile race. So um,
Wow.
again, there's not really it's not a perfect science by any means, but long distance pigeons, if you're trying to do that, you have to find somebody who is, if you're new, you have to find somebody who's accomplishing what you're looking to do, and then get the birds that can do it, and then select the ones that do it for you. And
Yeah.
so I think that's more key than bloodline is performance and paying attention to what's accomplishing the goals that you have as a pigeon
Yeah.
fancier.
Yeah. I agree. And in future episodes, we'll get into, is there a difference as far as training a bird for a sprint versus long distance, feeding a bird for a sprint versus long distance? But these are things we'll cover, and we got lots of episodes to come, Jeff. There is so much to do and so
Yeah,
much to learn as you're
yeah.
getting into the sport.
Yeah, it's
Um,
endless, and I still am learning. I still
oh,
communicate
me
with
too.
people and learn, and I'm still tweaking and adapting things, and always looking to gain seconds. That's what we're trying to do.
Exactly. This is literally a game of seconds, especially if you're in the GHC. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, yeah,
That's my dream to fly down there one day. Oh my gracious. I mean, they literally win and lose by actually, Jeff, I think it's tenths of a second now, isn't it? The clocks go out to three decimal places, I believe, don't they
yeah,
now? Yeah. So
absolutely.
I mean, it is incredibly close. I mean, your bird does one loop, you've lost the race.
Yeah, I won three races in 2024. I won three races by 1 second.
Oh my gracious. Wow. It's incredible, but it's so
Yeah,
thrilling.
yeah.
So thrilling. Well, I'm going to give you the last word. Is there anything else you'd like to say regarding, distances and types of races? Any other words of wisdom you want to impart on us before we break for today?
I just think that, for guys watching this that may be new, make sure to subscribe to your YouTube channel. Go and comment and reach out and ask questions, because that helps flow the content in the direction it needs to go. We don't. I oftentimes forget some of the more basic stuff because I've been around it so long. I don't think about it from that perspective. So it helps us both, I think, creating these episodes, learn and know what to ask. And if you are new, Facebook's an incredible resource for a pigeon fancier. There's tons of groups and people posting pictures and ideas and designs, and very approachable people on there with if you have questions. There's a few guys that you'll see are a bit prickly, but you just try to avoid them and and communicate to the positive guys. There's plenty of positivity in the sport too.
You and I can be prickly if we lose a race. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not going to be a fun day when we lose the race.
Yeah,
so.
absolutely. So, yeah, but check out Lamberton Racing Pigeons on my YouTube channel. There's, I think, over 50 episodes on there.
Yeah, I think I've watched almost all of them. And I'll tell you what, besides this podcast, I mean, people that like you that go out and interview the big people in the sport. I mean, just listening to those interviews, you can gain so much knowledge and information as well, which I think is just fascinating. So watch all the interviews on Jeff's channels, subscribe to our podcast, and hopefully between the two of us, we'll get you out there winning races in no time, because that's the goal.
Absolutely.
A lot of new people, they get into the sport and they spend a bunch of money, and they don't win. They get frustrated and they leave, and that's, I think, what you and I want to help avoid, right? Like, let's get the knowledge beforehand, set yourself up for success. Don't set yourself up for failure, right? And that's all part of what I'm doing in the sport,
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I hope, Jeff, that you'll be willing to come back and share some more knowledge, because you are, I think, the one person in America that really has been to Europe and can bring that connection back from where this all started to, and bring it home and help flyers here learn from what they do in Europe. And I think that's super.
Well, thank you for saying that. Yeah, I'm very lucky and want to pass on what I've been able to learn and be a part of to others. And happy to come on anytime. You let me know.
Awesome. All right, will do, Jeff. Thank you so much, sir. Have a great
you.
evening, and I've enjoyed our interview very much. We'll
All
talk
right, thanks,
again
everybody.
Bye-bye.